Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Wellborn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Wa-Na-Nee-Che, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source. Good day, Wa-Na-Nee-Che. I see you're drinking something you shouldn't be drinking there.
I know. It's vitamin D for Dennis.
I heard your dad telling you off before we started recording, as you said.
Oh. And then I think it's worse. My daughter comes home, she becomes mom.
Right. What I want to talk about this week, at least to start with, I was watching the X-Files again for the third or fourth time from the beginning, and there was an episode set on a reservation. I don't know if you ever watched Twin Peaks, but I can't remember his name. The actor who played Hawk, who was one of the deputies, was the sheriff in it, and the episode was about a werewolf, basically, a shapeshifter. So I've wondered if you wanted to talk about, 'cause America's got lots of weird and wonderful creatures, Bigfoots and Mothman and all that. Was that kind of thing going on before the Europeans came over?
In some ways, especially down in the South, where you have the legend of the Skinwalkers. And the story goes is how they became Skinwalkers was that if you had a individual that was very connected to the energies and had these tools, that people who wanted to have more power would go dig up their graves and steal all their medicine. But I don't really understand, where all these tales came from with the skinwalkers and other things. Because when you really look at reality sometimes, certain things can happen to individuals when they're brought into this world. And disformities, certain type of thing, genetics and everything like that. So there is some basis to it, but I think a lot of it had to do with genetics on how basically the individual happened to be born.
So a bit like what was, 100 odd years ago, the freak shows like the Bearded Lady and things like that then.
Yeah, but same thing. The only thing that I can probably, what I'm getting right now is the fact that remember, spirits can be good, spirits can be bad, and they can possess certain things to allow those particular things to do their bidding for them. Uh, Native people were very connected with nature, and they were very connected with the unseen world, what we call the spirit world. So the spirits existed, and they can be tricked, they can be coerced, and then sometimes they just basically will do things because they want that power back. So I think when we deal with some of the legends and everything, I think a lot of them had to do with how they utilized the spiritual on the earth.
Did you have all these, for example, like the modern ones that we have now, well, you have now, there's lots of films made about things like the Amityville horror and possessions and the Mothman, Bigfoot, which is a different thing, but did any of that kind of stuff exist before the Europeans came? These possessions.
Yeah, there was, certain, even though it wasn't, how would you say, rampant, very, very seldom. It's just like in our way, in the Ojibwe way, we call it Lugaroo, which basically was a person that came from the water. And he was could be a good spirit, could be a bad energy, I should say. So because they would always tell their kids to scare their children, be careful or the Lugaroo will come and get you. So again, it's hard to say. I'll probably have to put tobacco out and go into vision to find out exactly what how it's related to the human race. But we did have stories long before the Europeans came.
Okay, I also wanted to talk about the Mothman mythology. The Mothman mythology is not actually an American mythology. It's actually a world mythology. Okay, and the story of the Mothman started, yes, in West Virginia during the 1920s, I believe, where it was the first sighting of Mothman. But the whole legend between the Mothman is that when he shows up, a great catastrophe will come. Okay. And that's actually what happened in West Virginia. I forgot it was the bridge that collapsed in West Virginia, if I'm correct. And
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
then there was a sighting of the Mothman in Japan before the nuclear reactors went off. So the Mothman is actually a world myth that is supposed to show of an upcoming catastrophe before it happens.
And
So that's the myth of the Mothman.
yeah, a lot of things too would come, and a lot of times it would come as a warning, to tell people to prepare. But again, since people didn't know how to interpret, you know, they couldn't basically prepare themselves for it.
Mm.
It's just like certain legends, like if an owl comes, according to the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, if an owl comes 3 times, somebody close to you is going to pass away. Now, the way I understood it sometimes is if an owl comes twice, to me, isn't that basically a warning
Hmm.
to basically say, look, you need to be careful. You need to do certain things to prevent something from happening. But when you don't know how to interpret certain things the right way, we interpret it the wrong way. And if we don't listen, we don't prevent it.
The Mothman does sound like more of the indigenous culture when it comes to the owl's symbology, because even the owl itself is a warning. And when you look at the Mothman, people spot him more than once before the catastrophe happens. It's as if he's warning them not to come in that area. He'll fly around that area of that catastrophe, seem like it as a warning itself. You get what I'm saying? So he's trying to keep people out,
Uh-huh.
essentially, or wherever this being is. And this is where maybe the indigenous cultures got their legends of the owl. You get what I'm saying? It could be that's what that being is the owl, what we thought that would show up when catastrophe would happen.
A lot of times too, people forget we have lost our connection, whereas we always had something that told us something was going to happen in the future. When we look at even the weather patterns, severe weather, animals will tell us when severe weather is coming, when storms are coming, when tornadoes are coming, when earthquakes are coming. But yet we've lost connection with nature, and we no longer understand what nature's trying to say to us. And a lot of times we think. So therefore, we develop stories, we develop things that basically aren't really 100% true, but they have their roots in things that we used to understand.
Well, the other thing, I mean, when you say we've lost that connection, we're all in buildings and a lot of nature's been chopped down, hasn't it, for the
Yeah.
cities. So you're not going to get the warning signs from owls because even if it turned up, you're not going to see it, are you?
hmm Uh, what's happening today is that human beings are so much disconnected that they're trying to find their pathway, but they're doing it in the wrong way. In order to find your pathway, the first thing you have to do is connect with yourself. And I basically have always told people I'll give you tools. And with those tools, you can find who you are and you can connect with your energies. And then you can do certain things. We became very knowledgeable of herbal energies that could cure us. But that was because an individual was connected to certain type of plant life. So because he had that energy and because he was more of the plant energy, the plant energy taught them how to utilize their healing qualities. But how many people now are connected in a way to understand that you're not going to learn a damn thing until you connect to your energy? That's why we had such a beautiful environment, a beautiful understanding of nature, because everybody walked their pathway. They got connected to their energy within the sacred hoop. So they understood exactly where to go if they needed to help certain people. They didn't take that person and say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to basically understand the herbal medicines, the herbal energies, because if it wasn't their gift, then it wouldn't do them any good. But you'll sit there and if the people who are trying to instruct people on how to become certain things, I think the first thing they have to do is they have to go to nature school to find out whether that gift is really theirs or if they learned it from another human.
Well, they probably have learned it from another human. So how
Yeah.
someone listening or watching can they go out into nature then and see these things first time or not?
Yeah, it'll come to them if they're really interested in finding their pathway, things will come. And when we sit there and allow other people, it's like, say, for instance, take a gallon jug of water. A guy tells the people, if you take a teaspoon of this water, you will gain connection. So what happens when the water's no longer there?
Hmm.
So whereas if you connect to your energy, it's everlasting. It doesn't basically disappear. Once you connect to that energy, more energy comes in that particular pathway that you're walking. So you get every single day, you'll get more information, more information, more information until you finally connect and you know exactly where you can go to connect. It's like in the CD when I say find your sacred space. A lot of times people will sit there and they don't understand finding your sacred space is just finding that connection within yourself. It doesn't mean you have to go to this certain place to connect. It means that you're in a sacred place where your energy will go to get more and more information. So we have a lot of people out there that are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. They're trained by a human being who does not have the knowledge because they haven't got the knowledge because they were taught by a human. Everything that we have, humans can only direct us into the right direction. And that's what I was so fortunate with Frank Foolscrow. Uh, Helped me out, Noble Red Man. And you had Medicine Bear Chief. And I had Douglas White. I mean, all of these spiritual people that I met in my life didn't tell me who I was, didn't tell me what my energy was, didn't tell me that they would teach me how to connect with their energies. What they did is, you will find your energy. We will give you tools. Martin Heiber was really influential when he said that things will come to you. He said, I can help you interpret things, but in the long run, remember, you have to learn to interpret these things yourself.
Oh,
I will tell you or give you certain tools. I won't tell you exactly what that vision meant, but I'll give you tools so that you'll understand how you can see what those tools were so that it'll belong to you. So my teachers were people who gave me information that helped me find the things I needed to connect.
Are you considered a tribal elder now then, Wa-Na-Nee-Che?
Oh, I'm saying elder, I'm old.
I know you're an old. No, I'm saying in your group, are you classed as an elder now then, or
Yeah,
shaman, or what?
yeah, I'm basically considered an elder. And but even like in, say, for instance, on our own reservation, I know the young children, the young kids are trying to discover who they are. The middle class ones, they don't care. They're just worried about living. And then the older ones sit there and say, well, it's too late. And the whole idea comes down to it is that the connection was broken between the grandfathers and the grandmothers with the children. When the dominant society said, okay, we're going to turn all indigenous people into white people. They won't be allowed to connect with their spiritual self. They won't be able to understand the energies. They won't be able to speak their language. So all of this was taken away so that they would not teach the dominant society how to reconnect. They were afraid that because once you reconnect, the only person that has power over you is the creator, God, the supreme being, and that's basically, again, was your boss. But because society wanted control, they wanted to destroy any type of connection that people would learn so that they would know who they are so that society couldn't control them.
I don't know how to follow that up now. Because that's quite grim, and we know that. So even in your own, um, I don't know what, in your own race, then there are a lot of people that, aren't interested in connecting with their indigenous past. Is that what you're saying?
There are some who are searching because they know that they're not complete and they're trying to find ways to reconnect. You know, it's like when we say a lie, and I believe you. I'll tell you the truth. And you say, oh no, that's not true. And a prime example, Donald Trump. I mean, he lies through his teeth, and people believe every word that comes out of his mouth. Even though the facts are right there, right in front of them, they still won't believe. They think he's the savior. And like him deporting people from South America, Mexico, Central America, they're indigenous people. They were here long before the Anglo Society got here. This was their continent. Both South America and North America was their continent. So they are indigenous. So why is Trump trying to deport indigenous people?
Because he's a fascist, probably. Well, he's certainly white supremacist by the sounds of it, from
Yeah.
what we see. We haven't mentioned him for a while, and that talking of monsters, then let's try get back to where I was at the beginning. So, the X-Files, saying that there was an ancient tradition of werewolves, that was just made up then. You didn't have werewolves.
There's always some basis, even though the way they describe them, there's probably a reason, but you'd have to go way back to find out why was the reason why they thought they were werewolves. There must, yeah. There was another one for the X-Files where Floyd Westerman acted in it, and it was about aliens, and they couldn't figure out how to basically stop the negative energy come from the aliens. And Floyd Westerman was sat there, and he had this crystal on his staff, and he put it in the ground, and he started chanting, and the vibration from the crystal came out, and it forced the aliens to leave. So at the end, Witchcall asked him, "Could I have that crystal?" And Floyd Westerman looked at him and said, "Sure." So he took it off his staff and gave it to him. And he left, and there was a young Indian boy there. And he says, Why did you give that power away to him? He said, they believe what they want to believe. He grabbed another crystal and put it back on his staff.
I haven't got to that one yet. I'm on season 2 at the moment.
That was quite of an older one, because Floyd's no longer with us anymore.
Okay, so you didn't. So there may have been kind of.
There's always something factually true that probably happened that started the myth, and that it was real at the time, but then they exaggerate. Remember, when if I tell a group of people and I whisper in one person's ear, then I tell them, whisper to the next person. And by the time you get to the last person, it's nothing like what you started.
Yep.
It's completely taken out of context because everybody wants to make it better and they want to make it his story.
Oh yeah, I agree on that. I just wondered if what the myths were prior to Europeans. So you didn't actually answer me on this one though. Did you have vampire myths? Because vampires, um, there's in Europe there was things like people being buried alive and they'd scratch the inside of the coffins and they'd bitten the tongue or whatever, so there was blood in the mouth was one of the things they said was where the myth came from. Did you have vampire myths at all?
Uh, not really. But then you've got to remember too that when certain things happen, in those days they couldn't tell if you were really dead or not because your pulse would be so weak they couldn't feel it. So a lot of people were buried alive. And then they came out of there. Of course, when they opened up the coffin, they had their scratch mark because they were trying to get out. But vampires, again, you remember that at a certain time, there was a disease in which people thought that blood could cure them. So they would actually drink blood. Just like Dracula. Dracula wasn't really a vampire. He got to where because his wife used to bathe in blood.
No, you're thinking of I forgot the name, Bathory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's someone else. That's she be and here's the messed up part about this, about that myth. The one who I forgot, is it Mary who buried in the blood of virgins?
I know her surname's Bathory, but I can't remember her first name.
But scientists discovered that young blood is helping with aging in people.
Yeah. Vampires come in many different forms. But again, you had viper bats that basically survived off the blood out of animals. So are mosquitoes vampires?
Elizabeth Bathory, I just looked her up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that was messed up about that is, like I said, right now scientists are discovering that young blood actually helps with reverting aging or something to deal dealing with aging. So it was kind of messed up that she actually had it right in a way, but let's not take young blood for young people. That's kind of messed up. You think?
Yeah, it's just like the practice, way back in the medieval times. When you were sick, they used to bleed you.
Well, that went on up until even fairly recently.
Yeah. So the whole idea comes down to there was a fact that certain things existed, but we kept adding, and adding until we finally came up a vampire that can turn into a bat, and that's human. He goes back and forth. He can't be during the daytime because he burns up. So again, we kept adding things to the story. And when you get back, it was realistic at a certain time, but it wasn't exactly how we describe it today.
Yeah, I just wondered if you actually had that particular myth over in your side of the pond. Okay, sticking with weird and wonderful then. Bigfoot. Did you have Bigfoot legends before the Europeans came?
Oh yeah, Sasquatch has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
What makes you think Sasquatch is human? Maybe he's an alien.
Well,
The aliens, now they're discovering the aliens were here before the humans were.
so Sasquatch is real then, would you say?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if you ever meet one in the woods, all you have to say is Anishinaabe. Oh hey,
What
which
does that
means
mean?
I'm a real person of the earth, and Sasquatch will leave you alone.
Well, we don't have them over here. Well, what about that famous picture of Bigfoot then? The one, is it from the 1970s? Do you think that's a real picture then, or is that just somebody in a costume?
Oh, well, I think it was just duplicated. The stories and how to describe Bigfoot. It's very easy to basically, you know, all you have to do is say Chewbacca. Chewbacca was Sasquatch.
Well, funny enough, talking of the X-Files again, there was an episode where essentially they were kind of Neanderthals, possibly, but a subspecies of the human genus that a couple had survived in the woods, and they ended up, local white American police shot the female, and it ended where they'd obviously had a kid, and the kid was still out there in the woods.
Uh,
So that's a possibility. It's just an offshoot of humanity that there's a couple of them left.
yeah, if you don't understand him, kill him.
Well, that does seem to be the attitude for a lot of people, doesn't it?
We become dehumanized. But we sit there when you look at it. How about people that are born and they're attached? So see, anything can happen in birth. Anything can happen in nature. You know, freak things. We get certain animals that never existed, but because they mated with other animals, now they existed.
Okay, our big famous one over here is the Loch Ness Monster. Do you think that exists?
If you go back in time and dinosaur, of course they existed. Did one actually survive? Who knows? Probably they could survive.
Well, here's an interesting thing. When I used to be in a medieval society at Tutbury Castle, the guy who was the custodian, so we're talking 25 years ago, he was ex-army, made all the armor. He basically sorted Tutbury Castle out. If you ever go there, all the paths are down to him and things like that. He told me and a friend a story about somebody who was going to be taking over this particular role, right? And they went into caves under Derbyshire because there's a lot of caves under there, and there were dragons under Derbyshire.
Uh-huh.
But like one person's like the custodian of them, and then when they're getting old, they get somebody else to come over. And it wasn't like the way he told the story seemed legitimate, and why he brought it up didn't feel like when one of his tales where, he'd tell you tales that were funny and things like that, a bit like you do. So there is a possibility that some of these things have survived, these weird and wonderful creatures that are still part of nature, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, if they actually discovered, fossils of dragons.
Have they?
Yeah, yeah. In
Yeah.
China, they have. Uh, and we have our own stories about dragons here. So again, the whole idea comes back into what was a pterodactyl? The pterodactyl mate with something and then discovered that all of a sudden they had dragons.
But they'd be the mystical type creatures,
Yeah,
though, of legend. The ones, more intelligent.
yeah, legends came from something that was at once true. But again, they took it out of context, and because they wanted to make it a little more interesting, they added a little on, then they added a little bit on, they added a little bit on, until the original doesn't exist anymore. Just like we have stories of the little people.
What, hobbits?
Oh, about Azo baby. Same thing as leprechauns.
What happened to them then?
Yeah, so we actually have stories about little people, and in Ireland they're called leprechauns. I've got like what we call them here, but they do exist. Even their spirits still roam the earth.
Are they like the fairy folk then?
Hmm.
Yeah. So they we're we're on about little people with wings, or just like little people?
Just little people.
Just little people.
Yeah,
And what happened to them then?
become dragonflies.
No, seriously, what if the little people existed like the leprechauns and that? What happened to them? Because
Probably still around, but just that they understand that if they're seen, they ain't going to survive very long. So they
So they
most,
buggered off when they heard the Europeans were coming over then.
yeah, we forgot to build a fence.
Or a wall.
Uh,
Uh, okay, then, well, we've got 5 minutes left. Is there anything we've talked about weird and wonderful things and connecting with your path, which is like topic that really is your area of expertise is connecting with your path. So anything you would like to finish off with?
I was laughing because you remember the comedian Hill, Indian. He was an Indian person. His name was Hill, and he said, "Yeah, when the Pilgrims first came to our shores, he said they looked hungry, so we fed them. We didn't expect them not to leave." That was the first welfare line, by the way. But I have to start encouraging people that rather than walking away from your pathway, walk towards it. And the pathway is a lot easier to find than someone trying to teach you somebody you're not. Everybody has the ability of connecting to their energy. Why do you think we had so many cures for illnesses? Is because people understood how to connect. Every person had a gift, and your gift basically helped other people. But how many people now are really helping people? Instead, they work on the mind. There's a thing called psychological illness. And I remember talking to some VA doctors, and it was so funny because they said, it's too bad you don't have a doctor's degree. You could run seminars with the doctors to help them understand psychological illness. I said, why the hell do I have to have a doctor's degree to understand psychological illness when I already understand it? And I said, but you sit there and they say, well, what's the greatest thing that's in society now that causes psychological sickness? I said, TV. Because you turn it on, it's the flu season, you're going to catch the flu. And after hearing it 10 times every time you turn the TV on, oh my God, I'm running a fever. I got the flu.
I know what you mean, those adverts, whenever I hear one, when they're talking about cancer or anything like that, I'm right, I'm turning that off. I don't want to hear that shit.
Remember the story I told you about the guy that was going to be executed, but he didn't want to be electrocuted. So they said they would have a poisonous snake bite him and he would die from the poison. So he agreed, but they put blindfolds on his head and had the snake and rather than the snake hitting him, they hit him with 2 needles, and he died because he actually thought he was poisoned. So again, the mind can create a lot of havoc, and if we continue to try to teach people to use the mind, they're never going to basically find a cure for things. The cure is here upon the earth for everything that bothers us, but we don't bother to go find out what it is.
So how can we, in a quick 20-second breakdown of how they can
My vision, they gave me 8 medicines for cancer, and they work. And they showed me that there's different type of medicines. There's what we call the great grandfather, great grandfather, great grandmother medicine, which is the actual just calling on the energies, the life force energies to heal. Then you have the spiritual, or the connecting with the things around you. And then you have the herbal. So there's 3 levels. And once you leave the grandfather, grandmother level, you can cure anybody just by bringing them into a Mother Earth Lodge and calling on the energies, the healing energies, to heal them.
Okay, now people will need to contact you and get in a Mother Earth Lodge because we are out of time now. It's been great talking to you. You said after next week, we're going to take a week break, didn't you? Because you wanted to rest.
Yeah. See if
We'll
I can pick up on my visions.
That's good. Okay, well, thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom, and we will
Turn it
catch you
over to
next
Matthew
week.
next week.
Yes, Matthew will be in the hot seat as well next week. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wa-Na-Nee-Che a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.